Good evening, everybody. How are you? I hope that you all are doing well on tonight. I'm not going to be before you long tonight. I just had a few things I wanted to comment on. Um, so I hope that you are up for a quick check in. How y'all doing this week? Feels like it's been a long time, but I do believe we were just here last week. So hasn't been too long since I checked in on you. But how you doing? How your mama doing? How everybody doing? I pray that all the mothers who check in had a wonderful Mother's Day. That the things that you wanted and needed, even if it was just some time with your family, um, which I think most moms kind of enjoy. If we'll be honest, we like the things; those are beautiful. But time with your family is an immeasurable blessing. And so we send out greetings to all the moms who stop in here regularly. Um, and we, as always, on Mother's Day, we lift up those special circumstances in prayer, those who've lost their mothers. Um, this time around, I had a real burden on my heart for mothers who've lost their children for whatever the reason, maybe so much is going on in the world. And um, a parent outliving a child is a painful thing. Losing your parent is tough. Losing a child um, has to be tough. And so I just had a special burden for in prayer for mothers who've lost their children. But I pray that your week is off to a great start. It's Wednesday, so you've made it just about through the work week for most. Some work overnight, some work weekends, but for most people, you've made it through. Some of the tougher days. I'm blessed every day that the Lord allows me to have an opportunity to make an income, make a living. So I thank Him for every single day. I don't hate any of those days. I'm looking forward to days of independent wealth. But until that time arrives, we're going to continue chugging along and making it happen in the mighty name of Yeshua, our Savior. Hallelujah. um, so I was thinking about this week and thinking about all the different things that have happened this week. And looks like this week has been a real interesting week when just some plain old common sense legal advice might be necessary. Now there's some folks that need some real serious legal advice, but we're gonna laugh a little bit and then we're gonna go on to bed because it's late. I don't know what time it is where you are, but it's almost 11 o'clock here. And for those of you who know, there are nights on our other channel, Christ is Our Culture. We burn the midnight oil, but over here at the check-in, we ain't burning midnight oil. We usually burn in 10 o'clock, 10:30 oil. Okay, but it's a little late tonight, and because of that, I'm not gonna be before you long. But I just wanted to just gauge for conversation and comments. If you've been watching some of the stories that have been out here in the news, we've got some really interesting things going on. Some quick pieces that I just wanted to mention. We are we about a week or so ago we shared some stories about food shortages, but then also some stories about things that are making food shortages worse. Warehouse fires, airplane crashes, all those different kinds of things, making a bad situation much worse. And one aspect of the food shortages that we've been talking about that has really been in the news pretty heavy over the last few days has been a formula shortage. And so, according to the makers of some of the popular baby formulas, we're in a crisis situation. For those of you, if you take a look around you, during quarantine, there's a few things that people remain busy doing. And one of those things was having babies. And so at this time, um, from what we're hearing, there is a shortage of certain brands of baby formula, and that this has been an ongoing shortage nationwide, and it's intensified in recent weeks. Some manufacturers are saying, they're at capacity for new customers. Other manufacturers say they're producing at full capacity and making as much formula as they can, but demand is heavily outstripping supply. In February, the situation was made worse by a recall of 3 brands of powdered formula made by leading formula maker Abbott Nutrition. And so, as a result, the FDA shut down a major Abbott formula production facility over safety concerns. And so, it's a real crisis. If you have been affected by the formula shortage, or if you are aware of families, that might be in need, if you have resources that might be available, feel free to drop that information in the chat, or in the comments at any point in any time, throughout the week, because we do know that families um, uh, are in desperate need, because the baby got to drink, baby got to eat. So, and so we know, for so many babies, formula is their primary source of nutrition. And so, all formulas marketed in the U.S., they do have to meet those federal nutrient requirements. Um, but hopefully, that is a situation that will be rectified soon, because we can't starve the babies, we just can't. And so, I don't know if you all have been experiencing any of those shortages in your areas, but I know in the St. Louis area, when you visit, some of the grocery stores here in the area, some of the shelves look worse than they did when we were under quarantine, and people were having to, when people were stockpiling toilet paper. And, that's another thing that I want to mention really quickly is, everybody's gotten real, up close and friendly. Right now, there's a recent story warning, that in the fall and the winter, it's possible for us to be dealing with another, outbreak of this COVID situation. So continue to be wise. I know we're ready to get back to normal. If you're like me, wearing a mask was beneficial, I think, even because of issues with hay fever and all of that. I'm probably going to be wearing a mask until the Lord calls me home. Just because it did make some situations a lot better for me, just with generalized health. So, but y'all don't forget, this time last year before, we were just teaching people how to wash their hands long enough to make sure they were clean. We were just making sure people understood, covering their mouths when they cough. So even if you're not concerned about COVID, definitely make sure that you're careful about, colds and flus and allergies and sneezing and coughing and hacking and all of that good stuff. The other thing, I know I saw some news stories about in our area here in the Midwest, that they're dealing with a hepatitis outbreak. And I'm like, what else could we deal with health wise? So just be wise, keep your hands clean, keep your hands to yourself. That's all I can tell you. Just keep them clean and keep them to yourself, and you should hope prayerfully that'll be fine and you'll be better. But yeah, be careful out here. There's a lot of stuff still out here in this atmosphere. And if you're not concerned about COVID, there's many other things out here that we need to be wise about, especially even our general health. And there was a story that came out of South Carolina. And we always talk about, making healthier choices and being wise and all of that. But there was a story out of South Carolina of a man who clearly should have considered his heart health before he decided to be a murderer. It's the story is reported by CNN. Says a 60-year-old man strangled a woman and tried to bury her in the backyard of their South Carolina home. But in the process, he had a heart attack. So in the process of covering the pit, he ended up dying. Now, talking about, you know, I don't believe in karma, but I do believe you reap what you sow. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. And the very body that he was trying to dispose of, the police ended up finding him out over a freshly dug pit. So look, not encouraging, because murders or anything. I'm saying everybody should be concerned about your cardiac health, about your physical and emotional health, because that story gets to physical health. And the story of the prisoner who escaped with the assistance of Casey White was his name, and the gentleman who escaped with the assistance of Miss Vicky White, no relation, but clearly they had some type of relationship or interaction. Now, Miss Vicky, it seems, was a honcho, an assistant honcho at the facility wherein young Casey was, well, not Casey, he's younger than her, was an inmate. And somewhere in the course of young Casey serving his time, he and Miss Vicky developed a bit of a relationship that was so strong that despite him being in the facility on murder charges, and where she was a part of the executive staff, Miss Vicky decided that on the day that she was to retire, Miss Vicky decides to help young Casey break out of the facility. Now, jokingly, we can say no good deed goes unpunished, but this is yet another situation where you just can't do wrong. And I'm not saying she got what she deserved, because the story sounds fishy. That she would kill herself based on the things that she was saying. So, but they're supposed to be doing some other testing and things, because it appears that as the police were closing in on them, there's a car accident that they're involved in, and they believe that she died from a self-inflicted gunshot. Um, Whether that was as a result of the accident or whether she was actually trying to take her life, we don't know. But at the end of the day, this woman who was set to go home and enjoy her retirement has gone on to her eternal reward, while young Casey has been returned to Alabama to face whatever consequences he has for his breaking out. And we should hopefully hear some more about that information. But clearly, this week was the week for legal issues as well. So, um, just a bit of advice. Um, Man, use your good mind. Use a little bit of common sense. When you're thinking about doing something like helping somebody break out of jail, you should probably rethink it. I was gonna say talk to somebody, tell somebody, because maybe somebody can talk you out of it. But if you've gotten to the point where she was, where she had weapons ready, she had all of those things, where it's probably nothing anybody could have told her. So when the idea starts to form in your mind, that maybe you're going to assist your man to break out of jail, you might want to reconsider that. And there might be some folks thinking about helping folks break out of jail, because the main story that I want to talk about, and then I'm gonna be out of here, is about I was on break and I saw a story that I know devastated the young people throughout the land. Um, and I'm only like passingly aware of who these people are that the story involved. But the story involved the arrest of one young thug, and well, that's his name, not like a general, just a young thug, but a young man who his stage name is Young Thug. I don't know his real name, and it's beside the point. And another young man who goes by the name of Gunna. Now, I don't know how extremely popular these people are. I will simply say I don't listen to their music, but I'm familiar with their names. I don't know much about them other than what's been reported in the news. I had to call my niece because she's the one who kind of helps me stay on her, along with with a podcast that I listen to, kind of help me stay, in tune with what the young hepcats are listening to. I know hepcat isn't something we talk about anymore, but anywho. So the way the story goes, it sounds like it's very possible that these young men could have some difficult times ahead of them. And so I busied myself to just kind of try to understand, because when something, especially when something is catching the attention of our young people, I even though I am not any longer a young person, I'm always mindful of the things that concern our young people, because I do have young people in my life. And so I'm curious, and I've been familiar with the words, RICO charges, and I've heard of them. And it was funny when I first started looking for RICO. The picture of the penguin from Madagascar came up, and I was like, "That's hilarious," but that's not what I'm looking for. And so when I looked up RICO, and where I was led to, it led me to just, so as you're seeing these stories, I'm just trying to be a help to you so that you understand what we're dealing with. RICO is the acronym that stands for the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. It was passed by the United States Congress in 1970, and it was pretty revolutionary. So prior to the RICO Act, federal prosecutors weren't able to legally tie organized crime leaders to the crimes that were committed under their leadership. But by passing RICO, those who ordered the crimes could be prosecuted along with those committing the crimes on their behalf. So those who were orchestrating things were getting away. I know you've seen the stories about, like Al Capone, and those who were in charge of like organized crime families, and how it was really difficult to ever get them connected to, because they were so far up the chain that you could get, guys on the front line, and you could even get those people around the middle, but you could never get to the person who was actually the cause of things. And so what RICO allowed is, RICO allowed you to take it up the chain. RICO allowed you to get to not just the person who was committing the crime, but the person who created even the call to the crime, who set up and called for or oversaw whatever the illegal operation um, was. And so when you're looking at RICO charges, you're not looking at an individual, situation. He did a bad thing one time. She did a bad thing one time. That's not a situation where you're going to be dealing with RICO. RICO offenses look at a pattern of criminal behaviors spanning over years and including multiple people. And so there's like 35 specific crimes that are included under RICO. And it's the stuff that you would think about, especially if you think about some of the older, like gangster stories, gangster movies and things: gambling, murder, kidnapping, extortion, arson, robbery, bribery, dealing in obscene matters, dealing or trafficking a controlled substance or chemical, counterfeiting, theft, embezzlement, fraud, obstruction of justice, slavery, even, money laundering, commission of murder for hire, embezzlement of union funds, bankruptcy fraud or securities fraud, criminal copyright infringement, human smuggling, or any acts of terrorism. And so if you're looking at, if you're at a situation where you're dealing with RICO charges, you're dealing with a pretty bad actor in a pretty bad situation, in a pretty bad set of circumstances going on over a period of time, involving a number of people. So what I was curious about was, because I like I said, I'm familiar of stories where RICO charges were brought against, some of the stories that we've seen in the news over our lifetimes. Like I remember in the '80s when they were heavily prosecuting some of the New York crime families, and um, that RICO charges were brought there. Well, these are so compelling too, largely because of the penalties that are connected if you are convicted. Generally, if you're convicted of federal racketeering or under the RICO Crimes Act, you're sentenced to a maximum of 20 years and $25,000 fines per count. So if you're dealing with federal RICO charges, and let's say, there's just two offenses. So, okay, it's got to be a pattern. So two is a pattern. And so if you're looking at least two offenses that occurred over a 10-year period, involved multiple people, you're going to be charged, and end up with a potential maximum of like 40 years. And depending on your age at the time of your conviction, and the number of charges that you're dealing with, it looks like it's pretty easy for RICO to really end up being a situation that could cost you to be locked up forever. And so, or the rest of your forever is what we'll say. And so, the story that we were following dealt with a couple of young people who were clearly involved in a criminal enterprise, or are accused of, I won't say clearly, they are accused of having committed some crimes over a span of time involving multiple people, and crimes that were in that list of things that RICO tends to cover. Like I said, back in the '80s, you remember, well, who was it? Okay, it says here the Genovese family. I don't know if you all remember, like a few years ago, there was a group that was planning an action against Planned Parenthood. Those people were given RICO charges as well. Um, it's being used for those who conspired with Bernie Madoff, in his schemes, even like the BP oil spill that happened down in the Gulf some years ago. I believe that there were some RICO statutes that were dealt with there. There was a big story last year. Young man, he was a enforcer and a hitman in the Gangster Disciples. Because of the amount of time and the number of crimes, he was convicted of murder, killing witnesses, and a bunch of other crimes. And so we warn quite a bit on this channel, and on some of the other channels. We warn people quite frequently about um, the company that you keep. We warn pretty consistently, just about being wise in your decision making. And where this story I think is most tragic is the things that the young people that are involved are being charged with aren't things that happened while they were young, hustling, trying to make it in a cruel world. A lot of the situations where people turn to a life of crime, and just find themselves as the result of their situations involved in some things. Um, these things were happening like 2012, 2013. And so this is at a time when their, young careers are starting, and they're still very young men. But this is at a time when it's like not necessarily something they needed to be doing, but being a part of some situations where it appears that, like, one of the charges against one of the young men is he rented the car that was used in the murder of another person. Um, you know, Literally running a criminal enterprise is basically what was going on with one, and the other charges being brought because of him being a part of the criminal operation. And so, um, if you see people talking about those things, hopefully that little bit of information will help with maybe understanding what all that talk is about. And so I'm sure we'll see a whole lot more of that moving forward. But you know, here we also we don't just go forward with information here. We do also like to offer bits of encouragement. And here's a piece of encouragement that I want to give. And I really think that it's really key in this time when we're living in a world that's very money hungry and love with money, which, if you are familiar with the scriptures at all, it's that love of money that is the root of all evil. It's the loving money will lead you into doing some things that you will regret. Not having money, the scriptures tell us money answereth all things. So having money isn't the crime, but it's your heart's condition towards that money. And many of us will never deal in the amounts of money that some of these folks that we're going to be hearing about, um, in this trial, as it's going forth. Many of us will never deal in the amounts of money that they're talking about. But it doesn't mean that we won't deal with issues where our heart's posture concerning money don't come into play. And I'm not saying, I don't know y'all business. Y'all might be out here running some criminal operations, but um, for those of us that work for a living, and it's not necessarily a criminal operation we're part of, um, who don't necessarily understand, how could they, why would they, think about the times when you've gone to the limit, on your job. You've worked beyond, what made sense because there was just something that you really wanted. And times when the job was put before your family, the job was put before everything because you had to get that money. Um, be mindful, when we're talking about these situations, of just how we talk about these situations, because again, these are young people who are impacting our young people. These young men involved in this case, unless you've got a child who does not listen to anything in the common culture, that maybe they don't know these kids. But most of our young people in the world are familiar with these young people. So this situation is going to impact them in their emotions and their thoughts, how they process what's going on in the news. And hopefully you'll be at a stable place in your thinking where you're able to help them with processing these situations, understanding how to point them in the direction of, yes, this is wrong, but this is how you can avoid those kind of issues in your life. And so I'm hoping that we're able to grab the lessons out of this situation and help our young people process, just what they think about this, but not just what they think about what's happening to Young Thug and Gunna, but how they think about their own lives and how they're preparing for their own future, and, helping them put, money and possessions and flash and grudges, some of the things that these young folks are being accused of. It's like murdering people. It includes a lot of different things. And so, I think that it will provide those of us with young people in our lives an opportunity to have some really rich conversations with the young people around us. But even those of us who are a bit older, and we're kind of overseers and responsible for young people, take this also as an opportunity for you to understand, the things that people are dealing with. Why, does a young person with everything ahead of them, make a decision to do something? Do we glorify in certain communities? Do we glorify, criminals? Do we make a lifestyle look interesting? Do we make it more appealing? Is it respected? How do we handle crime in our community, regardless of what community you're from? How will stories like this affect those outside the young, the young Black community, outside those who don't listen to that music. It's going to be just another, opportunity for them to say, this, that, or the other in general about people because of the specifics of this case. Who knows? But I wanted to make sure that we're at least a little bit informed on what it is that you're going to be seeing when you're hearing these stories. Is understanding you're going to hear, what profiling. You're going to hear, well, why are they picking on them, and well, why aren't they doing anything to this, that, or the other? I hear you. I hear you. But we also have to be pursuing living righteously as well. So um, I pray for those. My heart goes out to people connected to those who were doing things that they knew were wrong. My prayer is for those who were connected to them. Those young boys have families who will be devastated by what's happening. Some of them may have children who will be devastated by them. All of them are connected to the young people who listen to them. They're connected to other artists. They're in the music industry, so they're connected to other artists whose work, plans for projects are probably going to be affected, by their associations with them. People who had absolutely nothing to do with what was going on, but their livelihood will be affected by what ends up happening, as a result of the crimes that these young men have been charged with. So there's a whole lot of things to take into consideration when you're thinking about why people do the things that they do. And I'm not an apologist for bad behavior. I'm definitely not. That's not what I'm not here to make you feel bad for the choices that these young people make, because it's choices they didn't have to make. You never have to kill, somebody like that. You never have to be involved in that kind of thing. So, I'm not out here pleading because of bad choices, but I am saying, let's think about it on a different level as you're going through, and let's know what we're talking about when we see these stories, and understand these are not, you know, things that just on suspicions. They're If they're going to the mat, if they're going to the limit of dealing with RICO charges, you're going to be dealing with some pretty serious situations. So, um, let's keep the families of those affected lifted in prayer. Let's keep our young people, as always, lifted in prayer. Check on your young people is what I'll leave you with this week. Check on your young people, because they very well may be trying to figure out how to feel about this and how to think about this. And when things like this happen, it affects how you think about things like the legal system, how you think about bad behavior, how you think about the choices that you're making. And so I think, like I said, I think this is going to give us some opportunity for some good, rich conversations about how we deal with situations in our community, in the Black community, in America. I think this is going to really open up some opportunities for us to have some conversations, and I hope to have them here. I thank you all for listening. Those of you who will catch the replay, I ask, thank you. Those who stopped in, passed by, responded, whatever. I thank you for even taking a moment to stop in. But as I said, it's late. As you can see, I'm exhausted. We've had a long day, work, and then a great time in church. Happy birthday to my sister Deshonda. Um, Pray the Lord blesses her. She preached a powerful word today on her birthday. I was encouraged like nobody's business. Thinking about, there was a point she made where she talked about there was a person that she discussed in her message, and it's a piece of the message that just won't leave me, and it's about Caleb. And we know, for those of you who are into Bible stuff, if you're not, good night. God bless you. But for those of you who are interested in Bible stuff, there was a situation where the children of Israel, they're leaving the wilderness. They're in the wilderness, and they're moved. They've exodus from Egypt. They're on their way into their promised land. Their leader sends spies over into the land. Just check it out for us and see what you got. They send one from every tribe, so there's 12. 10 come back, we can't do this. 2 come back with a different mindset. 2 come back convinced that because God said they could, that they would. And one of those 2 was a young man, well, a man by the name of Caleb. And Joshua, Caleb and Joshua come back with a different report. And because of that, they are blessed with the opportunity to live to see the promised land, to live to see what God promised be fulfilled. And so it says a lot about how our mindset has to be. The things that the Lord has promised us, we have to believe. As it says in the New Covenant, even when you're praying, you pray as if it's already done. And what Caleb and Joshua had was a mindset that said, if the Most High is with us, if he said it's ours, then it's ours. It doesn't matter what giants are in the land. It doesn't matter how big things are or how small I may be. It doesn't matter how strong my opposition is. It doesn't matter how strong the discouragement may be. If God said it, if the Most High God said it, then surely I'm going to accomplish it. I'm going to have it. It's going to be mine. It's going to come to pass. Doesn't mean I'm not going to have to do some work, because that's what ends up happening is ultimately at the age of 85, Caleb's like, look, I'm just as strong as I was when the promise was made, but there's some land that belongs to me. And I've been walking around here all these years, and these folks who weren't believing the Lord um, dying off, but I still want what's mine. I pray that you have that resolve this week, that even though the people around you are in disbelief, that even though the people around you don't have the faith that you have, they don't have the stand that you have, they don't believe the Lord like you believe him, I pray that you don't let yourself, as she talked about, not letting the majority sway your opinions, but that you be ever convinced about the things that the Lord has promised you concerning your life, your family, your inheritance, your promise, all of those things. I pray that you enjoyed that this week. I pray that you are encouraged to press on into whatever it is the Lord has told you to do, and that you accomplish it. So I leave you with a check-in for this week. 2 things. The first, check your faith. Make sure you're still standing on the promises that have been made to you. Make sure that you're staying focused on the goals that God set for you. Make sure that you're still hearing the word that was spoken to you. Make sure that you're not giving up on yourself. Make sure you're not doing what they were doing, looking at the people and seeing how big and strong they were and being afraid of going into the land and possessing the thing that the Lord said was theirs. Don't do it. Be encouraged. It doesn't matter how big the opposition, how big the discouragement, how strong it may be, you're able to do it if the Lord said that you're going to do it. It's going to be some work. It's going to take some discipline. It's going to take some order. It's going to take some work. But you put all that together and you shall inhabit the promise. I set myself in agreement with your prayers for accomplishment. The second thing is just a reminder, check on your young people this week. A lot of things in the news affecting them. We got babies who can't get formula. We got women making desperate decisions. We got young people, getting arrested on some pretty major things that could literally arrest their possibilities and take what could be long, productive careers and turn them into time in prison. Our young people are making decisions right now that will affect their lifetime. And there's no better time than now when we're in the season of graduation, those that are in school, progressing on to the next grade level. It's a good season to check in and see where they're standing, how they're walking, how they're processing this world that we're living in. So check on your people. Thank you for stopping in, putting up with the check-in one more week. We appreciate you. Have a good night. Bye.